I used to wake up early just to make breakfast for everyone, lay out their clothes, and tidy the house before the day even began. Now I sit with a cup of cold coffee in a kitchen that feels like a waiting room. Robert leaves without a word most. Mornings, just the jingle of his car keys and the sound of the door closing. Logan's been away at college, and the silence he leaves behind is both a relief and a wound. We barely speak on the phone. When we do, it's about money or textbooks, never about how I'm doing or if I'm okay. I've stopped expecting it. Robert and I have become polite strangers. We sleep on the same bed, but there's a gulf between. Neither of us dares to cross. He turns away before I even lie down. We eat dinner in silence, facing the TV. He asks if I need anything, and I say no, even when I do. Years of being together have turned us into a habit, not a couple. I can't even remember the last time he looked at me with interest. I could change my hair, wear a new dress, or cry in the middle of the kitchen, and he wouldn't notice. Or, worse, he would, but say nothing. When Logan came home for his break, I thought maybe I'd feel some life again in this house. He didn't come alone. Mia walked in with him, confident, pretty, full of energy. She smiled warmly when I opened the door and called me Karen, like we'd known each other for years. Logan didn't even tell me he was bringing someone. He never asked if it was okay. He just assumed, like he always does. She was charming. Helpful in the kitchen, asking me about recipes, complimenting the way I folded laundry, laughing at jokes I hadn't even meant to tell. She sat next to me on the couch instead of with Logan, sometimes touching my arm when she laughed, as if that were natural. I told myself she was just being sweet. Logan, meanwhile, left dishes around, rolled his eyes when I asked him to clean up after himself, and made comments about how stuffy the house felt. I tried talking to Robert about it. He shrugged and said, "That's just how kids are now," before going back to checking emails on his phone. I started watching Mia more closely, trying to figure out what it was about her that made me feel both drawn in and unsettled. She carried herself like she was in control of every room she walked into. She didn't try too hard to impress me, but she never missed a chance to say something kind or observe something others wouldn't. She noticed the photo of my parents in the hallway and asked thoughtful questions. She even complimented my perfume. One day, a scent Robert hadn't commented on in over a decade, one afternoon, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror after Mia had said I looked radiant in green. I pulled out an old dress I hadn't worn in years just to see. It fit. Tighter now, but not in a way that felt wrong. I wore it when I made dinner that night. No one noticed. Not Robert. Not Logan. But Mia smiled when she saw me, said, "That's your color." I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Acknowledged. Logan became more irritated as the days passed. He barked at Mia in front of us, dismissed her opinions like they were foolish. Once, when she was helping me chop vegetables, he made a crude joke about how domestic she was becoming. She didn't respond. I saw her eyes harden for a second, but she smiled and kept slicing. That night, I heard them arguing in the guest room. Her voice cracked, his was cold. I didn't move closer to listen, but I didn't walk away either. I started writing again, quietly, in a notebook I kept hidden in the laundry room. Just thoughts, feelings, things I didn't want to say aloud. I wrote about being invisible, about fading in my own home, about how someone could say so much with just a look, a touch on the wrist. I didn't name names. I didn't know what I was even trying to process yet. But I knew something had shifted. I wanted to believe it was just loneliness, just the absence of connection, the vacuum left by years of neglect. That I was clinging to the nearest source of warmth like someone cold would to a flame. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. There was an undercurrent to every interaction now, a line slowly being drawn and redrawn, pushed further each day. I hadn't crossed it. Not yet, but I was standing too close. And the worst part was, I didn't want to step back. Mia started staying around the house more, even when Logan went out with his friends. She offered to help clean, asked me about my past, and listened in a way that felt too focused to be casual. One evening, she poured us both a glass of wine and asked what I used to dream about before I became a wife and mother. No one had asked me that in years. I told her things I hadn't told anyone, not even Robert. How I once wanted to study art history, how I used to write short stories before I gave all my time to the family. She looked at me, not with pity, but with something softer, something that made me feel like I was still someone worth listening to. Asterisk. She reached for my hand during one of those quiet moments, her fingers resting lightly over mine. I didn't move. I couldn't tell if it was intentional or not. She didn't let go quickly, and I didn't ask her to. I wrote about it that night, told myself I was just reacting to kindness. I even ripped the page out after, but the feeling stayed. And it wasn't about her age or her being Logan's girlfriend. It was about what she was giving me. Attention, warmth, the kind of care I hadn't known in so long it almost felt. Logan's mood had shifted completely. He was short with Mia, accused her of being fake, distant, even manipulative. One night, I overheard him calling her clingy, saying she didn't know how to be in a real relationship. Mia didn't cry, but she stayed in my room that night. She didn't ask. She just came in and lay down next to me, fully clothed, eyes open. I didn't say anything. We didn't speak. But I stayed awake the entire night, aware of her breathing, the distance between us, and how close it kept shrinking. I kept telling myself it was all in my head, that I was misreading everything. But the tension was growing, not hostile, not dangerous, just too intimate. One afternoon, while Logan was gone, she walked in while I was folding laundry. She reached to help, brushed my arm, and I looked up. She didn't step back. She leaned in, and I didn't stop her. Her lips touched mine, soft, brief, but deliberate. I stepped away, almost stumbled, heart pounding. She said nothing, just picked up a towel and kept folding. I sat in the bathroom for almost an hour afterward, unsure of what had just happened. I told myself it was a mistake, that I let something happen I shouldn't have. But I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel disgusted. I felt alive, shaken, and worse, I wanted more. I kept thinking about her eyes, the calmness in her expression, the fact that she didn't try to push anything after. She didn't act different. She didn't apologize. And that scared me more than if she had. I started seeking her out after that. Little excuses, asking if she wanted to help with dinner, watching a show together, sharing snacks late at night. Logan barely noticed. He was always texting someone else, going out, making plans without her. I saw how she looked at him, not with love, but with detachment. She was already gone from him. But she hadn't left the house. One night, I caught her watching me while I adjusted a loose strap on my dress. It wasn't a passing glance. It lingered. She didn't look away. I held that stare longer than I should have. Nothing was said, but something shifted again. My skin burned from that moment, from the unspoken acknowledgement between us. I went to bed that night without speaking to Robert, without even turning toward him. I lay awake, not thinking of my husband, not worried about consequences. Just playing that moment on a loop. Logan began to suspect something was wrong. He started asking if Mia was acting weird, if I'd noticed her being cold toward him. I told him I hadn't, which wasn't a lie. Mia wasn't cold. She was distant, from him, not from me. The more he questioned, the more he withdrew. He started leaving the house angry, slamming doors, ignoring both of us. Mia didn't care. She started sitting closer, speaking in lower tones when it was just the two of us. And I let her. I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what it meant. There was no plan, no promises, no seduction in the traditional sense. It was just presence, hers filling all the empty spaces left behind by my husband and son. It was not love, but it felt like rescue. I didn't stop it. I didn't try. I'd already stepped past the line. I had just stopped admitting it out loud. Logan came home earlier than expected. I was in the hallway when I heard his voice call out, but I didn't respond. I walked toward the bedroom, unsure why my heart was racing. The door was half closed. Inside, Mia was sitting at the edge of the bed, her shirt slightly wrinkled, hair damp from the shower, reading something from my nightstand. Logan pushed past me before I could say a word. His face changed the second he saw her. His silence lasted too long. Then he looked at me. He didn't ask questions. He just stared, like the pieces had clicked and he hated what the picture showed. He didn't shout right away. He walked out, came back in, slammed a drawer shut, then screamed. Accused us of betrayal, humiliation, ruining everything. I tried to speak, to tell him it wasn't what he thought. But it was exactly what he thought. His face twisted, not with pain, but rage. Pure, uncontrollable rage. He threw the lamp across the room and demanded we both get out. I didn't. Mia stood there, calm, silent. She didn't flinch. That made it worse. He stormed out, slammed the front door so hard the frame cracked. I stood frozen, heart pounding, hands shaking. Mia looked at me, said nothing, then walked into the guest room and shut the door. That night I didn't sleep. I waited for a message, a call, anything. None came. In the morning, Robert was sitting at the kitchen table. He looked up, then back down. He had his phone in his hand and asked, without emotion, "Is it true?" I didn't lie. I nodded. He didn't ask for details. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just said, "You've broken something that can't be fixed." He stood up, walked to the closet, and began packing a small bag. I watched him, unable to say anything that would change what had already unfolded. He left before noon. I didn't ask where he was going. I didn't have the right ... By the evening, Mia was gone too. No goodbye, no confrontation. Just her things missing from the guest room and a folded note on the kitchen counter that only said, "I never meant to stay this long." I held that note in my hand for a long time, not reading it again, just feeling the weight of its simplicity. She didn't explain. She didn't apologize. She just disappeared like she had never been there. But she had been. Her presence still echoed in every room. Logan didn't come home that night or the next. I tried calling him. No answer. I left voicemails. I tried messaging him, but each one stayed unread. I called one of his friends. They said he was fine but needed space. I wasn't surprised. I had shattered something foundational between us. A mother isn't supposed to be the one who breaks the home. I had crossed a line he didn't know could be crossed, and he couldn't forgive that. The house was too quiet again. But now, the silence wasn't just absence, it was consequence. I walked through it, like a stranger in my own life. Every room held a memory I wanted to erase. Every item reminded me of this sequence of moments that led to this collapse. I cooked for no one, sat alone at dinner, cleaned without purpose. It felt like grief, but I couldn't mourn something I'd destroyed myself. I stopped journaling. I didn't want to read my own words anymore. I didn't want to relive how I got here. The truth was simple. I wanted to be seen. Not by Logan, not by Robert. Just by anyone who looked at me and didn't see a role, a label, a fixture. I was starving for connection. Mia gave that to me, not perfectly, not purely, but enough to make me forget the cost. Until the cost arrived. I watched old videos that week. Logan's 5th birthday, Robert laughing in the background, me chasing bubbles with a cake in my hand. Back when things felt full, even if they weren't. I sat there with the screen glowing in the dark, watching my younger self move with purpose and love and clarity. I didn't recognize her anymore. I envied her. I hated her for not knowing what was coming. I started sleeping on the couch. The bed felt like a lie. Every night, I stared at the ceiling, hoping for a knock on the door, a message, anything. None came. No forgiveness, no confrontation. Just absence. When a mother fails her son in a way that has no repair, she loses the right to expect anything in return. That was my punishment. Not exile, silence. Not screams, distance. I didn't regret everything. That was the worst part. Some moments. When I remembered the way I used to feel invisible, I understood why I let it happen. But understanding doesn't undo the damage. And the damage was permanent. Not just to my marriage. Not just to my son. To whatever version of myself once believed she could hold it all together. Now, I just exist in the aftermath. No explanations. No justifications. Just the echo of a decision I can't take back. When your son crosses a boundary, you scold him. When you cross one he never imagined, you lose him. And that loss doesn't scream. It whispers, every time you walk into an empty room and wonder if anyone will ever look at you the same again. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. The first few days, I checked it obsessively, convinced Logan would at least want to scream at me one last time, but silence took over like dust on untouched shelves. I used to dread his moods, his dismissive tone, the way he rolled his eyes at everything I said. Now, I would have given anything to hear that again. Anger meant a door was still open. But indifference? That was final. Robert didn't come back. Not for his mail, not for his clothes, not even to argue. I imagined he spoke to Logan. Maybe they bonded over what I'd done, made sense of it together, decided I was better erased. A mistake to be boxed away and left behind. That hurt more than I could admit. I was the one who carried this family through years of routine, emotional gaps, and distance. But the moment I slipped, everything I did before stopped counting. The neighborhood felt colder. People waved less. Word must have spread, or maybe I just imagined it. I barely left the house anyway. I didn't want to see familiar faces. I didn't want to answer questions. I didn't want to smile and pretend. There was nothing to pretend about anymore. My days were reduced to silence, and my nights to thoughts that spiraled into regret, and then circled back to defiance. I played that moment back often, the kiss, the night she touched my face like I was something precious, not just useful. I tried to measure it against the wreckage that followed. It never balanced out. But there was still a piece of me that didn't call it a mistake. Mia was not love, not salvation, but she cracked something open in me that had been dead for years. Something human. And for a moment, I remembered what it felt like to be wanted, but Logan would never see it that way. To him, I was the mother who crossed into forbidden's territory, who touched what was his, not with lust, but betrayal. He couldn't grasp that it wasn't about him, that my loneliness had festered into something dangerous, that I hadn't meant to involve him in my pain. But he was pulled in by force, and now he couldn't separate my failure as a partner from my failure as a parent. I wanted to write him a letter. I even started one. But every sentence felt like a defense, and he didn't need explanations. He needed distance, maybe forever. That thought gutted me. A mother doesn't imagine a future without her child in it. Even grown, even angry, I didn't just lose my son. I lost the possibility of repair. And I had no one to blame but myself. Sometimes, I wondered if Mia thought of me, whether she regretted any of it, or if I was just a phase in her own search for power or validation. She never promised anything, and I never asked. Maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't, but she walked away untouched, and I was left burned. That imbalance stayed with me. She arrived like a visitor. I treated her like a lifeline. That was my failure. Asterisk. The walls of this house used to echo with life. Now they absorb my shame. Every corner is marked by absence. Logan's empty room. Robert's side of the closet. The space at the dinner table I used to fill with conversation that no one heard. I thought I was holding everything together. Turns out, I was just keeping everyone from looking too closely. Asterisk. Now I understand why. Silence can feel louder than shouting. It doesn't give you anything to push against. It just sits with you, follows you from room to room, reminding you that the damage has settled in and made itself comfortable. I've become a ghost in my own life, haunting spaces that once held purpose. Asterisk. Sometimes I still cook too much out of habit. I place 2 extra plates on the table before realizing there's no one to serve. I sit on the couch with a folded blanket no one needs. I wash clothes that haven't been worn in weeks. It's a strange thing to grieve people who are still alive, but gone in every way that matters. Asterisk. I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't know what to do with it if it came. What I want is something quieter, not redemption. Just understanding. I want Logan to look at me one day and know I wasn't trying to hurt him. That I didn't mean to fall. That I wasn't searching for scandal, only for breath. That I'd been drowning long before she ever stepped into our home. Asterisk. But even that feels like too much to ask. The truth is, I betrayed him. Not physically, but emotionally. Fundamentally. I tore the fabric of what little respect we had left. And I know he may never return. I have to learn to live with that. Not as punishment, but as reality. Asterisk. I still sleep with the bedroom door open, in case I ever hear his footsteps again. I leave the porch light on every night. Not because I believe he'll come home, but because I want him to know, if he ever does, that I'm still here. Not perfect, not justified. Just here, and waiting.